Okay. Other, besides Drupal people that are here by default, I'm just trying to understand who is in the audience.
Well, I'm just starting to look at it because I'm working on a website. It's for the Dallas Quilt Guild. And I was, I'm just thinking Drupal makes sense, and then I thought that really would make sense, but I'm not sure if it's overkill or not. I just have to.
Could be, doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
We'll get into some of the details. Barbara?
Well, I was just going to say, having been introduced to working with you for Dallas After School Network, I'm actually going to broach it to the Social Venture Partners International, because we actually have 82 chapters of these people who put money and skills into helping nonprofits.
Yeah.
And it would be way better than the conglomeration of different
systems.
tools they try to hook together.
Okay.
Which isn't a great way to do things.
Very cool.
I can probably say a little bit about our experience with this, because we tinkered with it, kind of wanting to understand what it was like and what it did. We're a Drupal shop, and we kind of came to the conclusion that it did so much in a very non-Drupal way that and this is over a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's very different now, so it'd be interesting where it is now, but it did so much in a very non-Drupal way that it would require a significant investment to learn how to use.
Okay.
And it wasn't really something that we were looking, we ended up not investing that time in
Sure.
offering it.
And there are really two different ways to look at it, and we'll kind of get into where it's been over a year ago and where it is now. But if you're looking at it from a purely developer standpoint, kind of like where you guys are, that might be something that is a valid concern. If you're looking at it, hey, what does it do out of the box, and can I just install it, configure it, and run with it? That might be a whole different perspective. So, Barbara.
I was just going to briefly compare it to anybody who's worked in a large corporate environment, maybe SAP, and familiar with that kind of an application. Very, very powerful, that does everything in the whole world, comes out of the box, and then you configure it.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to get an awful lot of functionality, and you simply have to understand what have you done in that configuration. That's the whole management trick.
Yeah. Well, today, here's what's on the menu. It's basically, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you would want or need CiviCRM. Talk about some of the key features, key components that are part of it, and in between kind of tell you some use case scenarios of where it might work out or not. I think we're a pretty small group, so if you do have some questions in between or something catches your eye, certainly feel free to jump in, or you can even wait until the end, and then we'll do a Q&A also at the end. So when you think of a CRM system, what do you think of? What does it stand for? What are you seeing? Especially the C part. Anybody? Customer? What else? Client? Okay. Contact, customer, client, constituent, doesn't really matter. I mean, it's all about the relationship management. Depending on your organization, you're going to call it something different, but at the end of the day, and all of us that have tinkered kind of under the hood with a lot of things, it's a record. It doesn't really matter what you call it. Now, why CRM systems in general are getting more and more popular? Well, one of the things is the traditional model really looks that you started kind of in the center, and then you've got these constituents, clients, customers all around you. And it's really a one-to-many communication, right? You got a website, you put your glossy brochure out there, they come in, they see it, and unless they need your phone number, they don't come back, right? Well, obviously the model's changing to something where you in the center are becoming one of them, and now the lines are starting to go all over the place. And when this starts happening is your websites kind of start sitting in the middle. That's still that little orange guy, right? And then you say, well, let's manage our contacts over there in Salesforce. And then somebody says, well, but we need a forum for our people to talk, for our customers to talk. So we set up Google groups, and some other groups already set up some Yahoo groups, right? And then you've got Constant Contact to send them out email and kind of stay in front of them, because they need to, of course, hear from you, 7 times before they take some kind of action. It doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, if you're a business, doesn't matter, right? Somebody else probably sets up already an Aweber account. So you've got all of these data points. Then you want to bring them over to an event, so you set up an Evite, right? And now you send out this mass email that goes out. Now you're trying to collect your RSVPs. And God forbid you actually are charging for that event. Now you got to integrate PayPal. Anybody see where I'm going with this picture, you end up with this big mishmash. And where's your data? Everywhere, right? Some of your email addresses are here, some of your RSVPs are over there, your payment information is over here. If you can dig out something out of that API, your FAQs or knowledge base might be residing here if you're answering a lot of questions about your organization. And again, this goes across the board. Doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, small business, or even a medium-sized business. The terminology might change a little bit. Some things might be more relevant than others, but it's still managing those relationships. So that's kind of where CiviCRM comes in and tries to cover the broad base here. So what does that look like in the real world? Who uses it? Well, associations, so membership type associations, activists, which is why one of the C's there was constituents, a lot of activist organization, a lot of schools, and certainly last but not least, a lot of businesses. And again, it's because that integrated reach, they can use it even though it's really targeted more towards nonprofits. And their version of CRM is the constituent because they're really looking and targeting it towards nonprofits. So who's actually using it? All right, you might have heard of these guys, Wikimedia Foundation, right? They're using it. You might have heard of Amnesty International, right? They're using it. Conservation Fund. I'm putting some big names up here that you might readily recognize. Now, something you might readily recognize more from your own experience, these guys are using it. TechSoup is using it. It's kind of like Drupal. If you're in the know, you know who's using it. But if you don't, you go to a website and you might not even realize what's all running behind it when you're buying something, when you're registering for an event, when you're making a donation, something. Locally, as Tom mentioned, Dorbuzz using it, and they switched over to it. They switched to Drupal even only like about, a year ago, and integrated CiviCRM with it, and it's definitely taken over. This is actually, believe it or not, in Dallas, one of the largest mountain bike associations in the entire United States. So they're using it for their membership, for their race participation, things of that nature. And then, as was mentioned by Barbara and I, the Dallas After School Network. They migrated to Drupal. Actually, they only migrated to Drupal at the beginning of this year. It's been in development for a while, but they migrated to this at the beginning of 2010 and have incorporated CiviCRM both for tracking their donors, tracking their member organizations, RSVPs for their events, etc. So what can you do with all of these records? So they're your contacts, right? And you're using them for, again, doesn't matter what you call them, members, clients, volunteers, donors, affiliates, it doesn't really matter, but you're recording all your information in one place and then you can manage it from there. You can segment it, you can slice it. So segmentation being obviously the big thing. You can create different relationships, different kind of groups. You can keep track of the activities. So every time you touch a contact, again, whether you're a business, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're talking about your donors, you know who talked to them, when that email was sent out to them, when that automated email went out, the newsletter or something of that nature. Did they click on it? Did they open it? Did it bounce back? Did they unsubscribe? Again, in a business or in a nonprofit environment, you can look at this and say, how often do they give us money? And again, whether it's a purchase or donation doesn't really matter, right? Is it always after we send out that particular printed flyer? Is it always after our annual event? When is our cycle of donations coming in, for example? So really you can organize, you can maintain all this information, you can keep track of those individual records. The key features from a development or somebody that really is going to be looking at the back end, it's extensible. So CiviCRM, a lot of people say, well, is that a module for Drupal? And actually it works with both Drupal and Joomla. So for those of you that hope not, but if you are thinking of making the jump, it does work on the other side of the fence. It used to work actually as a standalone application, but what they realized was that nobody was really using it that way. Everybody was putting it into a Drupal wrapper or some kind of CMS wrapper. So as of a couple versions ago, it only runs on Drupal and Joomla. So it's extensible. It's more than a module, but it's not quite like a deployment of its own. So it kind of lives in that space in between. It's really, if any of you have worked with like UberCart or some of those bigger monsters, this kind of is probably even half a step beyond that. But it is extensible. So you can do your APIs, hooks, you can set up your templates underneath it, you can do your database queries if you have a particular need to display something. And it's all exposed to the CMS. So it's integrated within Drupal in our case. And the nice part is it also does like user synchronization. So things that you might consider, not even consider perhaps when you're putting it in, but you say, well, if somebody registers in Drupal, do I now have to manually add them over here? Or on the other hand, if somebody registers for my event, I want to automatically create an account for them on my website. Can we do that? Yes. User synchronization automatically does that for you. So you can sync and you can sync to different roles. So you can say, if this particular content or if this falls into this particular category, I want them to be in this kind of group, which actually works really nicely with organic groups. Stephen?
This is something I've had trouble understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give a more detailed explanation of
Sure.
what the point of this is?
The user synchronization, okay. You can, for example, say, let's say you have a member-only event, okay? And you want only members to be able to register for it. You have somebody register on your Drupal website, and if their domain falls within a certain predetermined address, you can say, if anybody registers from @level10.com, level10design.com, I want them to fall into this group, and anybody that's in this group can automatically register for this event. So you're giving them a particular access rights. Vice versa, it works the other way. If you're in CiviCRM and you say, if you've registered onto this event, I want to add you to this like Drupal permissions. So now if you have a forum that says, we want to talk to everybody that's attending Drupal Camp 2011, right? If you registered over here, now you're automatically added here. Now the forum, you have access to that forum, the attendee forum. So it works both ways. Does that help? Yeah, I know you have some use case scenarios in your head, and you just got to work through them. But the nice part, like I said, it works. The records actually, when you pull up the profile, it actually tell you in CiviCRM, it says Drupal user number, and it'll give you that user number. So you know it's a one-to-one match. So you're not, if somebody registers for 3 different events, it doesn't keep recreating that record. It knows that, oh, okay, I'm the same person over here. So, and again, with organic groups, if you've played around with any of that, it works really nicely there as well. The other part I really enjoy when I work with this is very good import and export capabilities. The imports, you can map out your own comma delimited files. You can import them, you can say exactly how you want them, you can distribute it amongst a variety of tables, et cetera, et cetera. And for me personally, I've been in many times where you're using a particular software that says, oh yeah, great, we have imports, we have, we can do all this stuff to bring it in, but then we lock you. So if you want to do something with the data, or if, God forbid, you want to go to something else, you're going to pay, because now it's locked into the system. This, you can export it all out. It's all stored in your MySQL tables anyways, and they have the schema available if you wanted to pull it out that way, or you can just go into the export and say, I want to export all my contacts. I want to do this. As a matter of fact, with DASN, we're in the process of taking a chunk of our contacts because there's some things that need to be cleaned up, and instead of going record by record, we're just going to pull it out into a spreadsheet, say, here's what needs to be fixed, and then based on the unique identifier number, we're just going to re-import that data right back in. So you can do a lot of those nice things, and sounds very simple. Import, export, yeah, big deal, right? But it's actually very important that this has it built into it. And it has search functionality. So if you're searching for somebody that you need to know, you just know a part of their name. I don't know how Barbara's last name, is it Erickson with 2 Ks or 2 Rs or CK, or how's that spelled, Well, I can put in, Barbara or E, and it's going to give me all that nice list that says, and then you can just hover with your mouse before you even run off to that individual record, and it gives you kind of a summary screen for every record that says, okay, is this the right person that you're looking to work with? More of the features, access control, granularity, pretty heavy. You can define your own pages, you can define your own things. On the Drupal permissions page, CiviCRM is about that long. So you can really get granular about who has access to what. Never had an issue really there. You can define your own custom fields. So if you have a record and they call it one thing and you want to put another field in there, you can do as many of those customized fields you want. You have an event. We're doing one event right now with the Dallas After School Network, and they said, well, it's one event, but it's taking place at 3 different locations, right? So when you're sending in your RSVP, when you're registering, we need to know whether to count on you to be in, Richardson or South Dallas or West Dallas. Where are you going to be? Custom fields, wrapped into like a custom profile. It goes right there. As a matter of fact, I can now add people to a group that says, I'm going to be in the Richardson group for your event. So when we send out an email, I can say, directions for the Richardson group, just for you guys. I don't need to send one email with 3 separate sets of directions and everybody hunting through it. I can just send out one email and say, this is where you guys are going. You, because you registered for Richardson. You registered for, and if something happens in that area, again, those custom fields, quite powerful. On the record, you can attach it to the record, to the contact. You can attach it to like an event when you're registering. Very useful. Dedupe functionality. We all know that I know all your client data is completely sanitary clean, right? No, it never happens like that in the real world. You can have dedupe functionality where you say, fuzzy, strict, last name, first name. You can start juggling around with your weights there of how you want to do it. Then it brings up and says, I think these 2 records are similar. And you can say, okay, I want to merge them, or I want to merge it this way, or I want to merge it this way. So whatever field is here, I'm not going to override it, but whatever is here that's additional, I'm going to put it into this record and then consolidate it into one record, one contact. I've used that quite a bit. Tracking, access log, who changed what, how, when, and in the next version, they're actually going to even a more detailed tracking. So this is always under a lot of development. They're really coming out from their nonprofit background, and they're working on this, rolling out new versions all the time. Last but not least, from key features is the mapping functionality. A lot of people, they say, oh, I want to search for something in this vicinity, or I want to see where all the members or all this group is located. You can integrate it with the mapping functionality, so you don't need a separate, way of tapping into the database, pulling it out and then presenting it. They've already got that part built in. So that's generally. Now let's look at the individual components that you got. The CiviCRM, kind of the big picture. Now let's look at the individual components. As of right now, it consists of CiviContribute, CiviMember, CiviEvent, and CiviMail. That's the donations, the member management, especially if you're like an association that keeps track of that, event management, and then bulk mail. There is another part called CiviReport, which is your reporting functionality. CiviPledge, where you can build individual pledge pages. If you've ever done any of the cancer associations, I'm running 10K, here's my personal pledge page. Now they're integrating that into CiviCRM if your nonprofit has use for that. They've got CiviCase, which is just about to get integrated into the main components. It's like a case management tool. Again, that's mostly targeted towards nonprofit. Grant writing, CiviGrant. And there is an alpha, very early alpha version of a mobile application. So you can access your data actually on your mobile device as well. So they've got a lot going into this, but these are kind of your 4 cornerstones of what it is. So what does CiviContribute does? It sounds like CiviContribute is only for donations, but I can tell you we've used it for a variety of things. I can see businesses using this even, like if you have any kind of online e-sales, you can use this. The contribution is just a label that says somebody gave you money. Now, whether it's a donation or whether there was a exchange of service or goods or anything like that, or they're just paying for membership access to your website, you can very well use that. So you can collect the donations, pledges. You can do it online or offline. So if somebody goes online, it redirects them to your, let's say, PayPal, and from there they come back, and then IPN tells the record that says, yep, that payment's been completed. It'll get marked in the database as a completed thing. So it's all self-integrated in that way. But you can also do offline, because we know that some people still like to, write the check or mail it in, or you're at an event and somebody hands you, a donation in an envelope or something like that. You can record those as well. You don't want to just keep, multiple ways and multiple places how you're keeping track of this. Automated receipts. If any of you have been in that situation where you have to send out your nonprofit deductible receipts, or if you've donated money somewhere and you get, at the end of the year when your taxes are due, you're kind of hunting them and saying, hey, I never got my receipt. What do I do now? Who do I talk to, right? This is automated. You can even email it out. And plugins. PayPal, Authorize.net, other financial systems that you could use with this can be integrated into it. So again, you're on your donate or event page where it says, this event is $50. Okay, you click here, it'll reroute you to PayPal, you complete your transaction, you end up right back in CiviCRM. So it's all integrated with that, it's accounted for that. We doing okay so far? All right. So let's go to look at CiviMember. As it says, it's membership. You get to define your categories and your rules of who belongs where. So you can have multiple levels of membership. Gold, silver, platinum, whatever, small company, medium-sized company, big company, individual and corporate, sponsorship, access to your website. Again, it can be numerous. The one nice thing that I've used this with personally is not only you can define a membership for the parent company, so to speak, but everybody that belongs to that, that's an employee of that company, it can propagate down as well. So if somebody says, hey, we're selling, some kind of access to our website, some subscription, you can buy it at the corporate level, and then everybody that's already registered and is an employee of that company gets automatic access to it. So it can propagate it that well as well. Self-service, people can sign up, subscribe, unsubscribe, renew their thing. It sends them automated emails that says, hey, it's a 1-month membership or it's a 12-month membership. You can set it up on calendar, on a 12-month rotating, any way you want it. It's got it all configurable. So the notifications and self-subscriptions are built into that. The tiers, again, you can split it out any way you wanted. This one is free, this one is for 12 months, this one is for 24 months, this one is a lifetime subscription, membership, whatever you want to call it. And again, the rules, they propagate and they sync with, again, going back to the access rules, they sync back in. So again, if you have a forum for members only, if you go to dasn.org and go to the forums right now, you'll only see what's available to the public. If you're a registered member that has an account, you can log in and you actually start seeing membership forums. And that's without anybody on the back end touching anything else right now. It automatically knows because of those rules that have been set up once, and then you just forget about it. CiviEvent, this is your Evite replacement, tracks participants, literally from who's gone in and registered, who has paid, who hasn't paid, because you can even have an option that says, I will mail you a check. So now at the back end offline, you have to reconcile, okay, I've got a $50 check here, who is this for? There is a system for that. You can set up your price sets and discounts. So early bird registration, ends 2 weeks before the event. You got it already built in. You just say, I want to enable it. This is what I want to discount it as. And off you go. I have one price for members, one for non-members. I have, 3 different choices of meals. And it doesn't even just have to be with prices. It could just be like what we're doing with this event. It's a no-fee event, but do you want to go here, here, or here? So you can do a lot of those things. You can also do offline imports. We had an event where we had 600 people attending. Well, 200 of those came from basically 2 different organizations. We're not going to go to that organization and say, please go ahead and type in all of that stuff manually. Now, they just sent us one spreadsheet, and again, we defined an import and said, okay, this is going to be all the registrations for this particular event. It jumped right into there. They were recorded, paid for, etc. So you can do a lot of that. Again, receipts via email. even a little functionality that says, I want to tell others about it. So they just put in somebody else's email, and, it says, oh yeah, I want to tell a couple other people that I'm going to this, or maybe they don't know about it, so you can do that. And it pushes out your events to iCal and RSS as well. And I've had this integrated with feeds, so it pushes automatically into your Drupal. It creates the node and it pushes into your Drupal calendar if you have that functionality on your website. So you can do a lot of combinations once it's in that format. One other thing about the Civi event, you can even, and you might laugh, but something is ridiculous, but then again, when you're doing 600 people events, putting name tags. I mean, you don't think about it, but when you have 600 people coming to an event, that becomes a chore for somebody for multiple hours. And this thing, you can just pull it out of there, print your name tags, even have like an export that says, give me my name tags for this event. CV Mail, you're obviously personalizing it. It's pulling out from whatever records are available. So, it's the usual dear first name or dear last name, dear salutation last name, whatever you want to set it up as. You can see all the statistics. So the opens, click-throughs, the forwarding, pretty much everything you're used to from, your Constant Contact, your Aweber, whatever you might be using. Opt-out, again, you can set it up how people are signing up. Is it a single opt-in, double opt-in? Do they have to have an account? All that kind of stuff. And likewise, the unsubscribes. And statistics to go with all of that. So it also has bounce handling built into it. As long as you can set up a separate mailbox on your server, it'll go in and retrieve the bounce backs, and it'll mark and says, okay, these records, these emails have bounced back, and then you can set up thresholds that says if it's bounced back more than 3 times, mark it as undeliverable. So again, up to you, but very, very, very powerful what that can do. And it can replace, it's a free system. If you're running your own mail server or you're using something like a Google Apps or something, you can use that with it and not have to pay, $50, $60, $100 a month to Constant Contact or Aweber to hold your database. Because again, you're trying to bring all of that together so that okay, these people were sending emails and they're donating, and here's people that we don't have subscribed to our newsletter or that haven't participated in our events, and our client donor ratio is way off. Best resource, CiviCRM.org. They have forums, they have documentation. You can even go there and look up people that provide services around CiviCRM. They just had a big book sprint, so there is a book coming up, but there is a lot of information obviously available online, including like an ebook. And the community, we're thinking of, this is really kind of like a soft launch for a CiviCRM user group in Dallas. So if you guys are interested in perhaps, every month, every 2 months, 3 months, getting together and collaborating or sharing information on CiviCRM, certainly open to that. They have CiviCon now. They did their first one this year after the San Francisco DrupalCon. It was a whole week, and as far as I understand, they're going to keep doing it. They do trainings. Most of them are in San Francisco, New York, or in Europe. So if you're traveling in that direction, you might want to check on some of their official trainings. There are always a bunch of people in IRC. So if you want to get some immediate help or you just kind of want to check out the community. And then, like I said, this local meetup. So if you're interested, I'd love to be a part of kind of the group that's starting to organize this and meet more often and share ideas and brainstorm and get more in depth with issues of access control or particular organization or something like that. So that's really CiviCRM in a nutshell. Again, I think it's a very powerful tool that you can use both for nonprofits and businesses. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm kind of curious on how it works from a technical perspective with Drupal. Does it run outside of Drupal and integrate with it? Or does it actually run within, like does Drupal bootstrap every time that CiviCRM runs, or does it have a separate?
I don't know the technical, under the hood details, to be honest with you. But from my understanding is it always uses Drupal as a wrapper around it. Now, okay. It does bootstrap.
All add-in modules.
So it actually is a module, there's no separate PHP or index.php
Yeah.
or anything like that?
No.
It has
No,
its
no,
own
there
separate
was a lot of
database.
stuff that ran on its own last time we looked.
Yeah, it used
It
to.
holds its own separate
It's still using
database.
Drupal's cleaning system.
And the
Right.
main
So
thing
Drupal's
it's
running,
using
but then it's
is
kind of putting the content.
the,
Connection stream.
yeah, it's using your users, and it's also using all the security.
Yeah.
And the themes.
It has its own like index PHP for installation purposes, but once it's installed, it's all within Drupal. And then as far as database goes, you can set it up in one of two ways. You can actually drop the CiviCRM tables into your existing Drupal database. Not sure I'd necessarily want to go that way. Or you can just set up a separate CiviCRM database, and then those two play around together. So,
Is the native database MySQL?
yeah.
Is there a schema published for it?
Yeah, they have a schema published on their website. I don't know how fully complete it is because again, remember they're releasing new versions. I mean, 3.1 came out, I don't know, about 3 months ago or so. 3.2 came out after that,
But there's a 3.2.
and now there's a 3.2.3 out.
The 3.2.2 is, they've got, it's published with a picture.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they
You can
have,
always just go into the database itself and make your own export of it if you want.
yeah, but it's
But it's got all that.
it's the schema online does have the relationships marked up and everything else. So
There's one version behind, but
I had to go in and look up, event has a location and the location has an address, and I had to kind of string through the database because we're looking for some particular information, but I was able to figure it out just looking between the schema and the MySQL database. I was able to follow it without a problem. So, sir.
Peter, I've got a question. Not sure how to articulate it, but so,
There's 30 of us here. We'll help you out.
in plain English, so, is there a way that this will, in addition to sending out these, email blasts, will it also let, since you've got all your names and addresses that, in this database, can you also use this as your vehicle to have, one-to-one email conversations with your constituents so that you have all your information in one
Yep.
place and you're not
I-
duplicating it with.
I know exactly where you're going with this, and I appreciate you asking that because
That's
that's,
what I like about constant contact is, regardless of what.
here's your bulk email, but then,
I've got redundant information and half of it's wrong.
and it is a real problem. Both the nonprofits and the businesses that I work with, it's always a problem because somebody leaves and all that institutional knowledge walks straight out of the door or gets wiped out when their computer gets reformatted,
Right,
right?
right.
So that's a very good question. How do you keep track of that? And the really good answer is if you're already in the system and you just want to send out a quick email from while you're sitting on that record, it allows you to do it. It says send email. Okay, I'm going to this person, and you fill it out and it keeps track of it in your activity log that says, Peter just sent an email to Barbara. Okay? The other part that it also does that I think is really neat is, again, you designate a mailbox on your mail server, and you can be in your Outlook, Mail, Google Apps interface, wherever, on your phone, doesn't matter. And now I want to send an email to Fran, but I'm on my non-CiviCRM connected device. All I got to do is carbon copy or blind carbon copy that email box that I set up, civicrm@yourdomain.com. CiviCRM goes in, checks the mail, sees that I put Fran's email address on it, and says, oh, I've got a record like that. Let me attach that email to her record. Really slick.
Well, and then when that, when that association member replies, will it come back through here, or how does it all wind up in this one place?
I'm trying to, obviously if they reply to the same address, it's going to, if you just put it in a carbon copy field and they hit reply all, then it's going to end up in there. If it doesn't, then it's up to you to, once you receive it, you've got to maybe set up a rule in your inbox that says, if I receive something like this, just hit forward and forward it into at some point you got to rely on people doing the job. The system, because if I send you an email and you reply directly to me,
server, which is what I would like to have, where it's truly, an integrated solution. See what I mean?
Not quite there yet.
Okay.
Not
Think
quite
that
there.
might happen?
There's a lot of things. As a matter of fact, they right now have, what do they call it, CV Engage or something. Anyways, people always talk, hey, we need a better dedupe rules, we need a better this, we need a better that. And always people say, oh yeah, I like that idea. I'd be willing to throw in a few bucks. Our organization would love to, co-sponsor this. But it always kind of gets lost in the conversation. So what they actually have done now, if you go on their page, they've got a number of like the top requested projects that you can go and basically chip in. So you can see kind of what's in the pipeline. And they also have a published kind of path of where they're going with the next version and the next version and the next version. So
Okay.
I know they're working on 3.3 already, and I saw some initial discussions and potential meetings for what's going to go into the 3.4 version.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So again, it's open source free, so they're relying on other people contributing back as much as they're developing it.
Are they stealing members from Sugar and Salesforce.CRM?
Well, I can tell you in the nonprofit world for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're stealing in the business world as well, because if you're a tiny nonprofit, you get 5 accounts, at least you used to get 5 free accounts with Salesforce, okay? Which is great because you don't have to do anything. You just go in, you send them an email, you say, I'm a 501c3, and you get your 5 accounts, and if you want more, they'll give you, you can buy them. I think they even give you a discount. It still doesn't solve the problem of your data living in multiple places, especially if you're getting into that many-to-many interaction with your website. If your website is just, hey, here's my brochure, and that's it, and then I just want to manage my contacts over here, Salesforce might be perfect. But more and more clients that I work with are kind of going, yeah, how many of you have picked up a brochure at a conference or at a client site or something like that, and it lasts about 30 minutes until you, thumb through it and you toss it away? Well, that's what people are basically saying with websites now, is going, I need to have more than just a brochure. So how do I engage these people? Oh, wow, where's my data living? This is one of the first things clients, the discussions I have with my clients is, okay, where does your data live? Well, it's on this guy's computer and on this website and over here. And so.
Does this system handle call lists? So we have a lot of outbound calling, and I don't see an interface how you would create a call list to present it to an agent.
There is
Say call list?
call list, yes. One of the new modules, they'll start with Civi, so of course I'm thinking of Civi, but there is one of the new modules. There was a couple of political organizations, like political action committees, that have used it and have contributed back into the community, and now it's been taken in and kind of nurtured along. So there are ways that you can use this for call lists, for giving people, when you're going door to door, that kind of activism. And again, whether it's political or any other kind, there are people that are using it that way. It's more depends on your particular use case scenario of how you want to go.
So is that contribution on the website?
You can do it as a contribution on the website, but I mean, are you talking about call lists when you're asking for donations, or are you talking about call list where you're going and just trying to get people aware of an issue and maybe register or come in and do something or something like that?
Calling past customers.
Okay. I would say between what's already there, you can even segment it into your groups, which is what we were talking about with Steven, is how do you segment it out in such a way that you only see certain contacts?
I'm doing that now, and it's working great for me. Now, I'm not doing it on a huge scale, but everything in it is really geared towards a much larger scale than I'm using it for right now.
Did you use a contribution that was already there, or did you develop that?
I'm using it, I've got my partners, which are basically my donors, and I've got each of them a record in there. And then just whenever I call them up, I enter, the fact that I've called, but then I also schedule my next calls. And the first time I did it took some work, but then after that, now I just down to do that once a month or whatever, I just get a report and say, who do I need to contact?
Yeah, from a,
Follow that up.
from a user standpoint, also you can configure per user dashboards, so it'll pop up. So if he's responsible for events, he can have, here's the last 10 people that registered for an event, or here's the next 5 people we need to call. Versus if, somebody else is responsible for the payments coming in, you can see just a list of attendees that are registered but pending payment. So you can do a lot of those things as well.
Is there any integration with things like views in Drupal?
Yes, yes.
Okay. If you got integration with views, you could probably build your.
You can probably build that as well, yes. It's got integration with views, for sure. It actually has integration with Drush, which is really nice.
And you can also have groups belong to groups, which is very helpful.
Yeah, you can layer that.
Yep.
Fran.
Is it any more difficult to train somebody who really doesn't know anything about this? Is it similar to Drupal, or is it any more complicated?
It's got its own, screens and things, because it's obviously very different than managing nodes or things or blocks. But I would compare it more to like an Act, if you've ever used Act, installed on PC way back when, or if you've used Salesforce. They have a demo available on the website. You can go to drupal.demo.civicrm.org and log in, demo, and you can play around with it and see what it looks like. Most people that are using it that I've interacted with, they basically just kind of go, oh, okay, a record, activity, contribution, it just kind of starts flowing for them. Setting up some of the events and the discounts and all that, it might get a little bit fuzzier, but again, a lot of online documentation. So if you can point people and say, actually in the newest version, they have a lot of, mouse over help, or, click here and that kind of stuff, so.
And also, could you tell me a little about the grant, the city grant?
Yeah.
Is that like people can actually go and write grants?
It's basically a grant management tool. I know some organizations, they're cranking out 10, 15, 20 grants a month, and they just need a way of keeping track of it and where it is, what status, who's responsible for it. So it's in that area.
I'm just looking at the Drupal issue queue, and it talks about like the memory footprint of CiviCRM.
Yeah, you don't want to run this on a shared host that limits you to 32 megs of RAM.
Is there any documentation as far as how much memory this thing does require
Um,
on the server, like PHP? What do we need to set
I don't know.
PHP INI to?
I don't know specific requirements, but I've seen the recommendation of 128 megs of RAM in php.ini.
This one said it was like way over 256.
Well, and it also depends. It also
That could be some. I mean,
it also depends what you're doing. Yeah, and what you're doing with it, because if you're trying to bring in an import with 10,000 records
Right.
and hold that all in,
So with 128, you should be good. Then?
I've ran it with 128 before. It was fine.
Okay.
I would probably say, server side versus PHP. It's two different things, but I would say PHP should have 128 to run it. But it is memory intensive, but I wouldn't say it's memory intensive to where you have to have a VPS or where you have to have a dedicated server.
It's actually really responsive, like on the demo site.
Oh yeah.
It's,
Well,
it's very useful.
I would expect them to have it tweaked.
yeah.
I would expect. I run.
I haven't visited at drupal.org in a while.
Yeah. But I've got a VPS. I've ran it on a VPS with the whole VPS was running on 512, and it was very responsive. So the first time you go on that page, it loads. They got jQuery everywhere, so it loads. I don't know if it's a meg and a half, 2 meg worth of file, but then it's cached. So as long as you're staying in there, it's there. So the first page might take you a couple seconds to load. That's been my experience, is that the first page might take a little bit to load, but after that it's and now, like I said, now what they've done with I think it was in 3.2.2 version, where a lot of them, it's, you just mouse over and it pops up a whole separate screen. So they're saving you a lot of actual clicks and calls to the server, the backend database, and all that kind of stuff.
Just like in Drupal, you can go into the admin settings and use a different theme. These guys from, it's the Senate of the state of Texas, or state of New York, that they set up all the senators for their state with CiviCRM, loaded in all their constituents.
I work with it, the more I'm shocked. It's like with Drupal, you know, when you're coming off of commercial CMS system and you're coming off of commercial CRM systems, and then you say, hey, I can install this and run, and it's free? Yeah, now, of course, your configuration, your installation configuration, customization, all that, if you can't do it yourself, you're going to have to go find somebody, but you got to do that with the commercial ones anyways. So it's quite...
It's Ajax based.
Yeah, or, I mean, it's all, yeah, it's all nice.
It's quite amazing what it can do. I mean, I remember when I